Please stay tuned.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please let us take the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On the count of 3, we sing 1, 2, 3. Let's have our seats. Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Edo State, Governor Godwin Obaseki, the Secretary to the State Government of Edo, Osarodion Ogie Esquire, the Chief of Staff to...
Good afternoon, our esteemed viewers. Welcome to this live telecast reaching you from the ancient city of Benin. Precisely, this is the Festival Hall, Government House, and the event is the 2021 Management Retreat of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. This 3-day event started on Wednesday, and deputy directors, director, board members, director general, and curators across the country have been brainstorming on how best to develop and maintain museum infrastructures and resources to sustain the culture and tourism sector and contribute to economic development in the nation. My name is Agatha Egwari Ujo. Again, I'll be guiding you through this live telecast. Again, I say welcome on board.
With us here on this day. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not know how to describe this governor, but he is a very supportive governor to this commission. This governor is a very considerate governor. Ladies and gentlemen, this governor is a very dependable governor. I make bold to tell each and every one of us here that on my first encounter with this governor some years ago, precisely in 2017, at the premises of the Benin Museum, just as he is here today, he made himself available and declared open the S.O. Alonge exhibition, which was commissioned there. The takeaway of that day, which I will never forget. This government displayed the highest level of humility I have ever seen in a human. He is the only governor who restored the pride and the dignity the National Museum in Benin City. That pride and dignity was trampled upon for so many years. But this governor came, he did not only restore it, but he made a public apology to the staff and members of the Nigerian community and told everybody clearly that let the past be in the past. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have the greatest honor this afternoon to present to you His Excellency Governor Godwin Obaseki.
Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you very, very much. This is really, truly moving. I want to start by first acknowledging and appreciating the chairman, National Board for, the governing board for the National Commission for Museum and Monuments, architect Umar Mamman. In my experience as a governor, when you give women leadership responsibilities for organizations, they definitely make a difference. And so for us in Edo, we don't joke with our women. My brother, who has brought his magic wand to this commission and who has been the catalyst for the quality of reforms and changes we've seen in the museum in the last year or so since he resumed, the Director General of the National Commission for Museum and Monuments, Professor Issa Tijani. Let me also recognize all members of the board of the National Museum that are here today, the curators and members of staff from all the museums across the country, participants, I say welcome to the home of culture. I cannot express my gratitude and that of the people of Edo State that you chose to have this all-important retreat here in Benin City for your 2021 annual retreat. For us, it is indeed a privilege. It is a privilege to host you because we understand and we know the importance of culture, of arts, and institutions that house them, the museums. This afternoon, I decided that rather than give you the opening, the traditional welcome and opening address, I wanted to be a part and a participant in the discussions and deliberations. Because what you are doing here today, the topic this year, is so patently relevant to our existence as a people in the world today. With COVID-19, it's a different world. And what we see from our standpoint, we look back 600, 700 years ago and say, did incidents like this happen in our world? And if it did, how did our people respond? Because if it had wiped us out, we would not be here today. So these are challenges humanity have faced through generations. And that is what is resident in the culture of a people. That when you face challenges like this, how do you come together to redefine yourself in the world you live in? You have to look inwards as to who you are. And those expressions that will now help you adjust and adapt to the reality of the world you have today so that you can move forward. That's the importance of culture. It's very dynamic. And so you can talk about technology, you can talk about everything else, but what is key is you, the human being, and that innate characteristics you have to respond to your environment. So this afternoon, I'm going to run through a series of slides to explain how, from our standpoint in Edo, we see the evolution of our museums, the importance of first creating museum infrastructure based on which everything else will hopefully be catalyzed. You have to first, I'm happy you have an architect as your chairman. You've got to first create that environment. You've got to create the physical expression, the physical environment you need to do the work you want to do. If we did not have this hall, you will not be here seated today to even have this deliberation. So that physical infrastructure is key. And the ambience, the way they are designed, the way they look, will determine whether they are of use or not, whether people actually come in there to see the things in the museums. So for us in Edo, we are blessed, we are grateful to God that we can proudly say we're the home of culture, and it's not something you can contest. And it comes from our long history, through the centuries, the very strong governance institutions which we inherited, which is epitomized by the royal palace. For us as a government, you have to use what you have, your endowments, to propel you forward. And we see culture as one of the key endowments we have as a people. And therefore, any conversations, any discussions about our development and how we want to position ourselves in the country today will not be complete without us leveraging on that key advantage we have that most people don't have, which is their cultural heritage. And so in defining our agenda in 2016, we had 6 thematic pillars. And culture and tourism is one of them. So it's important to know that in our interactions, in the things we've done, it's not accidental. It's not political. It's part of a design that we must use what we have to reach out to the world. So why is this important? Like I said, yes, museums are not just places where you go and keep archaic things that don't have meanings. No. Museums are institutions that are supposed to be educational and informative, to help you explain who you are and why you are where you're the way you are. So just having a building and having a few objects is not the purpose. The key purpose is you seated in this room, who are supposed to be the educators. When people come in and you see these objects, you now begin to relate those objects to who they are and why we are the way we are. So the museum helps us tell our stories. That is what they are meant to be. And so for me, I'm also excited when you go into a museum and you see programs with young children from schools coming in to look. And it is important that we train our curators so that in translating the import of these objects, they really are doing it right. So that people want to go back there over and over and over again. We also have realized that museums are instruments of transforming cities. There is a museum in a place called Bilbao in Spain. Bilbao was the headquarters of a separatist region in Spain, where you had the Basque separatists who said they wanted to secede, they didn't want to be part of Spain. And so there was quite a lot of turmoil through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But then they got to some peace agreements. And part of the redesign of the city, the master plan was to bring several institutions. But one significant investment was made by the Guggenheim family. They built a museum, the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. Today, Bilbao has been regenerated. They have, in 5 years, more than 500 people, 500,000 people, 500,000 people coming there to just look at exhibitions in that museum. And it has led to the development of the city, development of hotels, restaurants. It's a totally new city. Somebody coming there after 30 years will not believe that this is where they were fighting. That's the picture of, the Bilbao Museum in Spain, how one museum translated the future of a city. We are fortunate that the key architect working with us on this museum today is somebody who's been honored twice by the Queen of England. And he's one of the most brilliant Africans, due apologies to our chairman, museum architects in the world today. He designed the National Museum of American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. He's a Ghanaian. It's Sir David Adjei. We had the privilege of going to him to say, look, we want to build something iconic, something that will make a difference in Africa. We want to build it in Benin City. Can you work with us? And he says, look, as a black man, this is my dream. I've always wanted to do something for my country. I've gone everywhere in the world. I want to make a mark. And later in this presentation, I'll let you see what we have done, the preliminary sketches, and where we're going. Our encounter with, the state's encounter with culture, like I said, it's not new. It's part of our design. And as God will have it, one of the projects before I became governor was the collection of photographs by Chief Eso Alonge, who photographed Benin cultural, economic, and social scene for about close up to 50 years. And I think upon his passing, he got all the negatives and donated the negatives to the Smithsonian because he wasn't sure how they would be preserved. And I think it's late Professor Kaplan, Adowaye Kaplan, an American woman, she died last year because of complications from COVID. Then passed those collections to the Smithsonian, and they've been there. One of the curators he came in to a group in Lagos before I became governor and said, look, we have these fantastic collections. We don't want to just enjoy them alone in DC. How can we bring them to the Benin City, the homeland? And he showed me a preview of some of the photographs, beautiful photographs. I mean, you can imagine photographs that were taken in the 1940s, some as late as 1930s, showing how Benin used to be, the coronation ceremonies of Oba Kenzo, I believe, the coronation ceremonies of Oba Ediawa. And as God will have it, I was going through the collections, you had the synopsis. And one of them was this beautiful woman lying on a couch with, picture with hand painted, they had to paint over it. And I said, wow, that looks like my mother. And I looked, and yes, behold, it was, because I think it was taken when they were 16, and their parents sent them to go and take, and these were the collections so I had to become part of that project, contributed, and as God will have it, I became governor. Fortunately, the current Minister of Health, his parents were also part of the collection, and they formed a team and worked with the museum to make sure that exhibition came to life. But it was just not about the exhibition, but it was also a collaboration, collaborating with the National Museum here. And so as a government, we put money, helped refurbish that institution, because we're going to have at least some standing exhibition, in Benin for the first time. That was the opening ceremony. The American ambassador had to come in, for those of you who remember. And the exhibition is still on as we speak today. So those are, I'm sure a lot of you will go around and make sure you see what we have before you leave town. Like I also said, for us, art is part of our essence and part of our design as a government. So for the first time in the history of this country, Nigeria participated in 2017 in what you call the Art Olympics. That is the Venice Biennale. This is where annually, if anybody who is worth its salt goes to Venice, and the whole city of Venice is just one big museum with exhibitions everywhere, every other building. And that was the first time in the history of our country. I want to thank the Minister for Information and Culture, who appointed me as the commissioner to represent Nigeria at the Venice Biennale. And that's what we did. When we came into office in 2016, we didn't realize that the issue of our artifacts, that most of them taken out of Benin during the exhibition, had become very topical globally. I started with a group in Oxford University who were, radical students who were pushing and saying, look, this crow we have here is not ours, it was stolen, we don't like the circumstances, send it back to the home country. Out of that group, they came up a discussion team they didn't call themselves the Benin Dialogue Group. And they have been discussing on these artifacts for more than 12 years, about 15 years, to say, what do we need to do to return some of these works back to their homeland? So in 2017, I met one of the professors, I think they came into Benin, and we then asked, how come the government of Edo State is not part of this conversation? We would like to be in the conversation. You cannot be talking about something that's so dear to us without the government of the state being involved. So we volunteered to participate in those conversations about what and how to return these works. In 2018, that's the picture before, yes, we then went to Leiden in Netherlands, and that was the picture we took there in Leiden. They have a beautiful museum, and the Benin Dialogue Group at that point was made up of representatives of the Palace of Elba of Benin, the curators of major museums in Europe that are holding these works, and us, the government of Edo State. So at that session, I then said in my presentation, I said, first, we can't be talking about works when we do not know how many and the extent of those works. So we need to first have a bibliography or, some analysis of the amount of works we have. I mean, how much? Some of them said, 3,000, 4,000 pieces globally. I said, fine. But it's important that we have a document of how many pieces we have. Secondly, it's important to also know the provenance of these works, because some of them have changed hands several times. Some of them are held in all sorts of open or closed arrangements. And, so we must understand the provenance. When were these works taken out? Who bought them? How were they transferred? And how did they get here or wherever they are? And they then accepted that, okay, it's a project which we'll work on. Then the second issue they raised was, look, who do we return these works to? I mean, something you've kept and it's an attraction for your museum, you don't want to let it go that easily. So they said, who do we return to? Because when most of these works left, there was no country called Nigeria. Yes, they had an original owner. I said, don't worry. We will create a structure that is credible and permissible to all of us. It's going to be transparent. And so the issue of ownership, the issue of who you should return to will not be an issue. It's as long as it comes back to Nigeria and it comes to the place it was taken out of. The third issue they raised was that some of these works are very fragile, and we're keeping them under real pristine conditions so that they should not deteriorate further. So if we return these works, do you have the conditions that we have here to preserve them and keep them intact so that they don't deteriorate further, so the world can continue to enjoy them? Because these works are now global public goods. Just like most of the works in your museums are now public goods. They've left private collections. They are now for the whole world to see. So it is important that we act responsibly to preserve these works, not only for your generation, but for future generations to come. I said, okay, not a problem. We will collaborate with you. The Edo State government now promised to build a museum of the sort of quality and standards you are used to, working in collaboration with you and the federal government, so that we can address the concern of how to preserve the works. So that was the mandate from that session. It was adopted. And I said, by the way, you cannot be discussing issues related to us abroad. Come to Benin. Your next meeting should be in Benin City so that we can concretize these plans. So in 2018, they came to Benin. That's them. We hosted about 15 curators from the major museums in Europe, in Benin. And at that meeting, we invited Sir David Ajie to come and present to us, what this museum, if we're building a museum, an international quality museum, haven't had the experience, what type of museum should we build? So he came in and made a fantastic presentation, which was quite instructive, and said, look, what you should build is just not a museum. It should be more than a museum. Don't forget that the Benin Empire spanned beyond Benin City. So in a sense, you have the dominant position culturally in West Africa. So in building something, you should be looking beyond the shores of. And as if he knew, in the conversations for return of works today, we're having works coming to Benin. They don't have a museum to keep it, and they're already talking to us and say, can we host and keep some of their works here? So we should build something that is iconic and something that represents the extent and prowess of the Benin Empire. So the second feature is that this must be a research institution, because there's still so much that is not known about the Benin Empire. So just not have a museum, but an institution that will research further to all that, so that we can begin to explain certain things. How over 500 years did you exist? How did you build these modes? How, without the skills, the knowledge in modern mathematics, you were able to carve products with artwork with such precision? There's so much we need to find out and discover about ourselves. So it should be a research institution. Thirdly, it should connect to other monuments that exist here. So it shouldn't just be a museum, but it's also link it up to the walls of Benin, the mode system, that were quite extensive, and the world is trying to find out how come. This is the largest defense, mode systems are the largest earthen walls ever created in the world. So it must be related to. So we have to understand the museum systems, the structure, the design, the architecture. And lastly, you already have museums, you have to link this new thing with what you currently have. And, so it's not just one building, it's a complex that deals with all the different aspects of the cultural life of Benin and Edo people. So that was the motivation. And we then said the issues of return should not be a problem. We will persuade the federal government to allow us sit at the table when these conversations for the returns are being held, and give us a prominent position. So rather than the traditional federal government, NCMM, going to have negotiations, can the NCMM create a framework, a structure, where the federal government is involved, the state is involved, and the royal family is involved? And so being on the table, we'll be able to discuss extensively, and everybody's concern will be taken in the discussion about the returns of those works. So that's why I will eternally be grateful to the federal government that they accepted that we should create a trust structure. Don't forget, my background is investment banking, and we know how people out there think. You create a trust structure that is open, that's transparent, and that the foreigners can deal with. They are rest assured that when these things come in, okay, there's a system that has its own checks and balances, a system that will allow them participate. So whether it is returning the works, they can see where the works are at every point in time, that they're not being recycled. They can see that, the conditions under which they are kept. They can also contribute. Because you can imagine somebody who's a grandfather. He saw some of these Benin pieces in a museum, right? His grandfather saw it, he saw it, his children have seen it. And so he means his grandchildren will not see it, but it will help to say, look, there was an original piece here. This is what it meant. The original is now back somewhere. You can always go and look for the original seed someday. So for generations to come, we don't lose it. And so it's important that since these works are global works, they represent Africa, they represent Nigeria, they represent Edo globally, we should not lose that connection with the world. So I'm so glad that the current management leadership of NCMM can see the future, and they supported this move. So we're very grateful that we've been having conversations. The royal family has been involved, we've been discussed. That's the Crown Prince and Sir David Ajayi, when in this hall we announced the launch of the MOA, the Edo Museum for West African Arts, last year, November 14th, I believe, after my inauguration. Fast forward, COVID, the dialogue group couldn't meet last year. But something significant happened. A black man was killed in Washington, D.C., Floyd, and the whole world was in uproar. And then the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, took off. And part of the conversations were, look, that's how you've always treated black people. That's how you came in and took away our glory, took away our artworks. So as part of the conversation to restore the dignity and hope for the black man, return these works you took back to their motherland. So even though the dialogue group couldn't meet last year, this was a conversation that highlighted, that affected us in the BLT, Black Lives Matter movement. And so that put pressure on a lot of European governments who are currently holding our works, that if black people, you have respect for black people, if you have respect for Africans, then return their works. And we're so grateful that some of them, and many of them, have heeded that call. And the major move was by the German government. And that picture shows the equivalent of the Director General of the National Museum in Germany, who came to Benin to come and inform us that these conversations were going on. And you know, the German government, Germany is a federation of municipals, of regions. And each region, like here, have their own museums and their own collections. But the federal government there coordinated all of them, asked which piece do you have, and brought everybody together. Let me also say here that that first request we made of documenting all our works, all the works from Benin across the globe, was picked up by the German government. So the Berlin Museum made the resources available to create a project called Digital Benin, which is a project that is documenting all works taken out of the city that were created here in every museum, private or public, globally. So you will have, don't forget that museums can either be physical or digital. So by the end of this exercise, you'll be able to have a virtual museum also, hopefully on our works, showing what is available everywhere in the world. So like I said, we are committed because we know the impact and the import of museums, but you have to start with the architecture. with the infrastructure of that museum to make sure that it is iconic, that it is different. It is where people want to go, they want to go and see. And they just don't go there and walk around. There are other things to do while they are there. And so for us, the Edo Museum of West African Arts is going to be part of the National Museum Complex. It is going to be the home for the comprehensive display of Benin art collections across the world. Yes, clearly the museum cannot take everything. And I don't think it's even in our interest to put everything there. Some pieces should still be abroad, out there somewhere in the original, but at least as long as we own them and we have given permission for them to be there. The museum is just not a museum on its own. As I speak, we have in town a group of international town planners. So we are undertaking urban and regional planning of Edo State and Benin City. And part of that plan, the urban redesign of Benin City, will include carving out a large area as a cultural district. And the museum will be located in that cultural district. And also doing a mapping that, okay, if we host 5,000 visitors every year as a result of the attraction that this museum will bring, where will they stay? So we have to talk to international hotel groups to help us set up hotels with restaurants, other things to do and to see. That is all being planned, put together as a plan for the urban renewal of Benin City. And the good thing is that there's amazing international support and excitement. Like some of the consultants and people we've been talking to in Europe and America have said, in their lifetime, they have not seen a project that will be as meaningful as this. So where are we? By the last quarter of this year, we expect to start that the first phase of this project will start. It will be the pavilion, and we are actively raising capital for the pavilion, which will host these works, the original works, when they come. So the conditions for keeping them, for preserving them, the research work, what your curators normally do. All of that work will have started at the pavilion. But also, interestingly, like I said, the British Museum has all made resources available for us to now undertake archaeological surveys, fresh archaeological surveys. The last archaeological surveys that were done was 50 years ago. So we need to, like they're doing in Europe and in Uganda, do a bit more archaeological surveys and excavations because we could find more valuable works. So that project has also, been signed up, and work should start in there. Whatever we find needs to be stored somewhere and studied. That will happen in the pavilion. And we'll show you the design of a pavilion. And also it will serve as a stepping stone and giving confidence as we seek to raise more resources to now build the main museum. Like I said, it's going to the pavilion will also be the hub for educational research. Because many of you will have to come in there to look at these objects, what you do, check them, compare them to things, do the measurements, do the radiocarbon studies, all the things you do as curators to check the authenticity of these works. You'll have to do that. We have an existing museum. It has some collections. We're just not going to leave it like that. It's been redesigned as part of the Emoa complex. So when you come in, yes, there's something, you have exhibitions currently there, the Alonge collections and many other collections that will come, that you will host, will just not be wished away. We will still use that piece, and host other types of exhibitions. And always realize, museums they should not always be about dated objects. Museums can also be about current and future objects. But you need thinkers people like you, curators, to help identify objects that are meaningful, that are relevant to our society, that explain who we are, to bring them and highlight them for people and for society to consume. And then lastly, like I said, we can have different collections. There's nothing that stops us from having a section, a wing, for instance, as a royal collections, if that's, So there's flexibility built in the plan and the design. And like I said, it's also going to have a walkway to the moats. We're restoring some of the city gates, trying to explain how it used to be. Now, fortunately, when you drive around the city, you can still see most of parts of the moat are intact. We're trying to restore them and do all the monumental work that's required. So, in conclusion, this year for us is critical. That's why this retreat is very, very crucial and important for us. We want all of us to speak as one. The world is waiting to see, these black people, they cannot organize themselves. They cannot agree. So that's an excuse not to return the works. Let's keep it until, and I don't think we should allow that happen. These objects belong to us. All of us want these objects to come back home. All of us must now rally round, come together and speak in one voice. Let the world give us our objects. When the objects are in Nigeria, whatever concerns we have, we will address at home. But to take a position and go and allow the outsiders to see that we are fighting over nothing should not be accepted or tolerated. We want our works back home. Many people don't want it from out there. Let us not give them the excuse. So I'm calling on you curators, because you are the authorities in these works, to join hands with all of us to make sure that as soon as possible, what we've been yearning for close up to a century, it happens in your time. MOI is open because that's the nature of museums. They are always open. They cannot be held in private premises. The moment they do, they lose that importance of access. They must be accessible. So it's open both metaphorically and physically. Everybody is invited to join and contribute what they can to make sure we build this iconic museum. And I want to assure you that as a government, it's something we are totally committed to. I'm a Benin man, I'm a Benin governor. If I cannot do it in my time, who will do it for us? And so, the architect doesn't want to say much. Quite a lot of design work has occurred. But this just shows you, these are the impressions. What they have done is to use local materials, earthenware, compacted mud. The materials they're going to use are all indigenous, are all organic. To try and relieve how, how did we build things in the past? Yeah, with a bit of modernity. This is, one of the impressions and designs. I'm sure the architect chairman is looking and trying to criticize. Don't worry, we'll see more detail. This is going to be the pavilion, where the original pavilion will start constructing that hopefully by the end of the year, where some of these works will come in. It'll look like a museum, but a much smaller version that will, of the big thing we have. It's going to have very sophisticated storage systems. It's going to have areas for, like I said, researchers to deal with excavated materials. It will have areas for dating, looking at the dating of objects, lots of research, a huge library to just do all the work required. But more importantly, it will have to be designed for safety and safekeeping. One thing we have here, which we're so proud of, is that this premises is being run by an IPP. So we're not depending on the national grid to give us power. And power is key, as you know, in storing these objects. So I want to thank you for listening. We'll, take questions for another 10 or 15 minutes. And you all follow me. There's an exhibition in front where you'll now see and experience what EMOA, the Edo Museum of West African Arts, will look like when completed. Thank you.
Quite an educative one there by Governor Godwin Obaseki. He has talked about the importance of culture and tourism and acknowledging that museums are instruments of transforming cities and his intention to use the rich culture and heritage of the land to revitalize the economy of Edo. He also talked about the push for the return of looted Benin artifacts when the British invaded the empire in 1897, and of course successes recorded from meetings to return the artifacts. He talked about the Edo Museum of West African Arts, a building that will be iconic and make a statement about the urban renewal drive of Benin City that we all used to preserve the artifacts when they are being returned to the country. And of course, according to the governor, last quarter of this year, work will begin at the museum. And first, the pavilion will be built to host the first batch of artworks that will be coming in. And according to him, it will be a hub for archaeological research. Also, the existing museum at the Obavorame Square, that's the popular King Square, will also be part of EMOA, that's the Edo Museum of West African Arts. This year, he says it's critical and crucial for all hands to be on deck. And for Nigerians, for all to project a united front that Nigeria speaks with one voice on return of artifacts looted.
All of us, we can see this exhibition later.
The governor there going to see some exhibitions of artworks there, right inside the festival hall of the government house. Exhibition of some artworks there, some that are scattered around museums around the world. EMOA, that's the Edo Museum of West African Art, is to serve as home for these artifacts so that tourists can share the experience of the history and cultural heritage of Edo people. Benin bronzes and other artworks are said to be in numerous museums worldwide and are great treasures wherever they are. Now, more of these objects said to contribute to the economic gains of other countries than their native country. Like I said, there's a great push for the return of these artworks. The federal government, the state government, the palace of the Oba of Benin, the Oba himself, His Royal Majesty, Omonoba Nedo Kwakpolopolo Oba Ewa II have all been on it. In fact, in April this year, like we heard from the governor, the head of the German Foreign Ministry Culture Department was in Benin, where he made known the intention of the German government to return some artworks in their country. Reports have it that Berlin's Ethnologic Museum is home to one of the world's largest collection of artifacts from Benin Kingdom. From figures, about 530 items, including 440 bronzes, while 900 of such artifacts are in the British Museum alone. Just imagine if such artworks are brought back to their home country and what the nation stands to gain from these treasures. Yes, that's what the new museum, that's the Edo Museum of West African Art, will look like when it finally comes on stream. That's Governor Baseki there, flanked by the Director General, National Commission for Museums and Monuments. And speaking of how the new museum will look like. And of course, like I said, the existing museum in the state, that's the one at the Abuja Square, will also be part of the Edo Museum of West African Art because it also has a good number of artworks there. Well, like he said, it's not surprising that Benin is hosting this retreat, considering the rich cultural heritage. And of course, is to further strengthen collaboration, working relationship between the state government and the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. Governor Godwin Obaseki there, and the chairperson, National Council, Museum and Monuments Governing Board, Architect Umar Dambo Mamanda, and Professor Abba Issa Tijani, Director General, NCMM, looking at some of the artworks, beautiful sculptural works there. Just a quick reminder that some artworks also on display. Just concluding a tour of exhibition of some artworks there. And just to let you know that the Edo Museum of West African Arts intends to also reawaken the minds of the people to appreciate the rich culture and history of their land, attract foreign investors and tourists, and by so doing boost the economy of the state. The National Council for Museum and Monuments, the governor believes, has all it takes to drive this process of change. Governor, DG of NCMM and the chairman governing board, a group photograph there. Yes, even with their face mask off, maintaining physical distance in compliance with COVID-19 safety protocols. This is a partnership between the federal government and the state government that hopes to benefit all sides. This is the management retreat of the National Commission for Museum and Monuments, and Governor, though he came in to formally open the ceremony, but he used the opportunity to brief curators, directors of efforts being made to return stolen artifacts from Benin. The issue of recovery of looted artifacts have been on the front burner for quite some time, and for the governor, Nigeria must be seen to be speaking with one voice in this regard, to ease the quick return of the artifacts so that the nation can benefit from its economic value and cultural value also. Like he said, the Edo Museum of West African Arts that will house some of these looted artifacts when they begin to return home will be iconic and make a statement about the urban renewal drive of Benin City. According to the governor, work will commence last quarter of this year, and first to build the pavilion to be built to host the first batch of artworks and also be a hub for archaeological research. The governor, in his speech, appreciated the federal government, that's the Minister for Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, for his efforts to ensure that the state government and the palace of the Oba of Benin, where these artworks were looted in 1897, were part of the dialogue for the return of these artworks. The governor there, done with interview with the press, While the management retreat of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments continue in a short while, Governor Godwin Obaseki, still in the exhibition room with the Director General of the NCMM and the Chairman, Governing Board of the NCMM, discussing strategies Governor Godwin Obaseki and top government functionary, that's the Chief of Staff. The management retreat of the National Council for Museum and Monument. Okay. Governor Basaki there and management of the National Council for Museum and Monuments, I'm sure still discussing modalities for the construction of the Edo Museum for West African Arts, MOA, what it will take and the work ahead. Of course, we're seeing artworks displayed in the room. The retreat of the NCMM will continue in a short while. Like I said, the Edo Museum of West African Arts, the governor has used this retreat to tell the stakeholders that work will commence in the last quarter of this year. That's how it's been on this live telecast. On behalf of the crew here, thank you for watching, and I hand you over to Abuja for the rest of our programs for the day.
NTA, you can't beat the reach.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Hello and welcome to revision classes on television. Today, we will be having a session in English language. Our guide is Peter David, and our focus today is lexis and structure.
It It is a revision lesson, and we are going to look at WAEC past questions between 2015 to 2019. But we are going to start today with 2015 past questions on lexis and structure. Section 1 of lexis and structure has to do with antonyms. Antonyms are words in English language or any other language that are opposite in meaning. For example, if you have a word like this, good, the opposite of good is bad. You have also another one, rich. The opposite of rich is poor. You have other ones like beautiful. The opposite of beautiful is ugly, and so on and so forth. So students are advised in this case to look for words that are opposite in meaning in any given sentence or passage as the case may be. Now we want to look at one or two questions from the past question of 2015, section 1. In each of the following sentences, there is one underlined word and one gap. From the list of words lettered A to D, choose the one that is most nearly opposite in meaning to the underlying word and that will, at the same time, correctly fill the gap in the sentence. Question number 1. The officer was expecting to be dashed by his boss, but he was sent short. The underlying word is sent short. The underlying word in that sentence is sent short. Now we want to look at the options. Option A is questioned. B is praised. B is praised. We have C, decorated, and D is guided. From what we have seen here, the word that contrasts with censured is option D, which is decorated. As instead of him to be blamed, he was decorated. Now, question number 2. The honor that was conferred on the general has been dashed. The word underlined in the sentence is conferred. And we have to look for the word that is opposite in meaning to that word, conferred. A, withdrawn. B, confirmed. C, rejected. D, destroyed. When something is conferred on somebody, it is a kind of honor that is being done to that person. And in this case, withdrawn is the opposite, which is option A, and that is the correct answer to that very question. So in that case, it is withdrawn that will be the opposite of the word. Now we look at question number 3. The modest young man was rewarded while his Dutch brother was punished. The underlying word is modest. And of course, when somebody is modest, the person is reserved about giving people his qualities or what he knows. He doesn't want to talk or boast about his true nature. Now we have the following options. We have option A, intelligent. You have B, handsome. You have C, conceited. You have D, wicked. When option C is the correct answer, because when somebody is conceited, the person brags about what he or she can do. So that is what we have under antonyms in this section of the questions. move to the next section, and the next section is section 2, which is based on grammatical accuracy. Grammatical accuracy is the obedience of grammatical rules. How are words used correctly in a particular question or sentence? Now, section 2. From the words letter A to D, choose the word that best completes each of the following sentence. The one that best completes, some of them may be there. Now, this is where we are going to see the obedience to the rules of grammar. Question number 11. After assuring the authority that he would not escape, the prisoner was released on dash. We have the following words as options. A, suspension. B, record. C, parole. We have option D as probation. Parole in this sentence is actually a permission that is given to somebody to leave a prison after promising that they will be of good behavior. So, parole is the word that will fit in to this very sentence correctly. Now we go to the next one. The next one is question number 12. A judge is required to dash justice fairly. And we have the options like this. Option A is defer. Option B is dispense. Option C is define, while option D is dispel. A judge does not defer judgment unnecessarily. A judge does not define judgment. A judge does not dispel judgment. But what he does is to do what? To dispense justice fairly. And that is to say, option B is the correct answer to the question. We move to question 13. The disease was dashed by doctors as pneumonia. Now, option A is diagnosed. B, prescribed. C, construed. D, decided. When a disease is diagnosed, it means an examination, a medical examination has been carried out before a doctor will come up with his own result. And that is to say, option A, which is diagnosed, is the appropriate answer to that question. Now, if you talk of option B, prescribe, you can prescribe drugs for a patient. Construed is quite different. Decided is quite different. That is why diagnosed has to fit in there appropriately. We go to question number 14. The God granted and dash against the eviction of the tenant. Option A, adjournment. B, injunction. C, indictment. D, adjudication. Adjournment has to do with a meeting. Of course, a court cannot do that when it has to do with a tenant. You also have option B, which is an injunction. And of course, option B, which is injunction, is going to be the correct answer to that question, because this is an action that is taken to stop another action. Now, question number 15, we look at it this way. He was given a certificate of dash in English. You have the following options: A, efficacy. B, efficiency. C, proficiency. D, sufficiency. Option C, which is proficiency, is the appropriate answer. Why is it so? Proficiency is a kind of certificate given to somebody because of the standard of skill and ability he has acquired in his profession. Now, we are going to section 3. And section 3 is based on idiomatic expressions, stroke proverbs. An idiom is a group of words that is used in a special way or sense that is different from the meaning of the individual words if they were to be used separately. That is the meaning of an idiom. Yes. In another sense, you can say that an idiom is a figure of speech. Yes, because so many of them can play the same role. When we look at something like this, to lead, for example, to lead a woman to the altar. And the meaning of this idiom means to marry her. And look at it here. What has to marry a woman got to do with leading her to the altar? So look at the individual words, altar, lead. Understand? It doesn't have any correlation at all, but the idiomatic expression is telling us that it means to marry a woman. Now, another one is to kick a bucket. To kick a bucket. To kick a bucket means to die. What has to kick a bucket got to do with death? But that is the meaning of the idiom. So it is advised when answering this type of question, a good knowledge of idioms and proverbs will help a student to do very well in section 3 of lexis and structure. Now, listen to the instruction. After each of the following sentences, a list of possible interpretation is given. Choose the interpretation that you consider most appropriate for each sentence. Question number 21. On hearing the news, he flew off the handle. What you should take note there is he flew off the handle. This means that A, changed his decision. B, ran away. C, felt very disappointed. D, became very angry. To fly off the handle, as it is used here, means to become very angry. And so, option D is the appropriate answer, which is became very angry. Now, look at the question number 22. John's money was barely enough to keep the wolf from the door. This means that A, John had killed a wolf. B, the money was just sufficient. C, the situation was desperate. D, John spent money lavishly. Correct answer is option C, which is the situation was desperate, as we can see here. Question 23. He was given the boot by the chairman. This means that he was A, offered a pair of boots. B, promoted. C, sacked. D, sent to buy books. Option C, which is sacked, is the appropriate answer to that question, because to give the boots means to sack someone from his employment. Now, question number 24. Since he left home, he has been trying to find his feet. This means that he, A, has been suffering a lot. B, lost his pair of shoes. C, has forgotten about his relatives. D, has been trying to get used to his new situation. Option D, which is has been trying to get used to his new situation is the appropriate answer. Now we are going to move to the next section. Section 4 of our revision lesson today is based on synonyms. Synonyms simply refer to words that are nearly opposite in meaning. In English and other languages, a synonym is a word that is nearly the same in meaning. Please take note of this expression, nearly the same. There are no two words in English that mean exactly the same thing. That is why students have to be careful with that instruction. Words that are nearly the same in meaning. For instance, when you see, you use sight, it denotes sight. Now you can also look. You can also do what? Watch. You can also do what? Glance. You can also do what? Stare. You can also do what? Scrutinize. And so on and so forth. But do we look TV? We don't look TV. We watch what? TV. Yes. We scrutinize a material to get the substance of that material. That is scrutiny. And so on and so forth. Yes. The way you watch your TV, in watching your TV, what do you see on that TV? You do what? You see a movie. Yes. You don't see TV, but you watch TV in order to do what? To see a movie. That is the difference. In case you have options like this in exam, because some examiners that are very smart can daze you with some of these options. So it is left for the student to really know the word that will substitute another one as the one that is nearly the same in meaning. In the same vein, you have other words that mean taking away somebody's life. For example, if you have a word like kill, you also have other words like what? Murder. You also have other words like assassinate. There are so many in English. But if a school child was killed yesterday, does that mean you should use the word assassinate? No, because the boy is regarded as a simple or a common person in the society. But if a king, if an emir, if a bishop, if a politician, a chairman, and so on and so forth, you see, is killed, we will use this word assassinate because of his status in the society. So let us look at one of those questions that has to do with synonyms. From the words lettered A to D below each of the following sentences, choose the word or group of words that is nearest in meaning to the underlined word and as it is used in the passage. For instance, if you have a word like this, theater. You have a theater in the medical line. Yes. in the medical line where operations are being carried out and so on and so forth. You can also have theater in entertainment industry. So it is when this word, where this word is used in the passage, that will determine the meaning of this very word. We have so many of them. You have another word, a word like blunt. You can have a knife that has what? A blunt blade. You can also say somebody is blunt. And of course, this blunt means dull. This blunt can mean also foolish. But if the blade of your knife is what is not sharp, will you say it is foolish? No, because of what? The context of the use of the word. So we have to be very careful the way we use words, because language is situational. Now we go to question number 31. Modu is endowed with great potential. The word that is underlined in the sentence is endowed. Now, we are going to look for the options here. The options are A, enlightened, B, provided, C, gifted, D, inspired. From the options we have, the word that is nearly opposite to this is what? Gifted in this very question, and that is option C. Then question number 32, collaboration is essential to the success of the team. The underlying word is essential. We have the options as A, desired, B, indispensable, C, effective, D, appropriate. Option B, which is indispensable, is the appropriate answer. Now we move quickly to the last section in today's lesson, which is section 5. Question 5 is based on part of speech. Question number 41. That utterance is quite unlike you. Please come dash it. A, through. B, of. C, off. D, against. Option C, which is off, is the correct answer. And that question is taken from phrasal verb. What is a phrasal verb? A phrasal verb is the combination of preposition and an adverb to make quite a different meaning, which is idiomatic in nature. For example, run off, which is to end, run up, which is to arrest or catch, as the case may be.
That's the much we can take today on the program. Join us next time for another educating session.